Hi everyone, this is Grace, and today I'm going to walk you through how to decorate this fun and funky rainbow set. So first up is this star, and I am outlining and flooding as always. In this case, I'm doing a 2 consistency outline and flood. No particular reason on this one, it was just what I was most comfortable doing. So that of course means using a piping consistency first. And I usually like to allow that to crust at least before moving on to flood. I just find that the outline is much more stable when I allow it to crust first. And then I use my flood consistency here. I should point out that this is an older video, so the video quality isn't quite as great as usual. And here is an example. You can see my shadow here, a little lesson on filming, something I've learned since. So the reason I have a shadow here is because my decorating hand is crossing the source of light. Big shadows like that occur when you're crossing the source of light with your decorating hand. So I used to sometimes support my decorating hand, my right hand, with my left hand, which is what you could see there. My left hand was crossing the source of light. So I'm guessing that my light source was in the southwest corner. But if I'm decorating predominantly from the, southeast corner, I should be putting my light in the northwest corner, if that makes sense. So here I am just using actually like a painter's sponge, and I'm mixing pure gel food coloring with water and just kind of dabbing it on there. Once that white is completely dry, that's really important that you let the white dry, otherwise you are going to puncture a hole in it with your sponge. And I just got these sponges on Amazon, nothing fancy. You want to kind of lay low on how much food coloring and liquid you use, because at least for me, this effect, I wanted there to be a little bit of white still seeping through. So just something to keep in mind. This here is a piping consistency for these rainbows. If I had to guess, this is probably like a medium peak that I'm using here. You could use anywhere from a soft to a medium peak for something like this. And I did kind of struggle, I think, to get these nice arches. I'm doing something that I normally tell you not to do, you can see here, is I'm keeping my tip close to the surface of the cookie as I'm attempting to pipe these lines. And yes, well, I was piping lines, but it was almost kind of like flooding, because you want to make sure that you're getting the lines to touch. And if I was doing a normal pipe where I was actually lifting my bag off, it would have been a little harder, I think, to kind of connect the lines. They also would have been thinner, which is fine too, but I guess I wanted a bit more of like a full kind of flat look on my rainbows. So just something to consider. And yes, I skipped the orange and the blue. That's just because needed to make them smaller rainbows, which is fine. And here I am using a tip. Back in the day when I used tips, just doing some quick and easy little dots for the clouds here. Certainly don't need to use a tip anymore. If I had to guess, this is probably a PME 1.5. That was my favorite go-to. Use it for lots of different things. And yes, that is food coloring on my fingers. Y'all, that happens. So that is the fun rainbows in the sky. And this here is just the really simple circle with lines on it. I always think it's important when putting a set together that you combine more complicated designs with less complicated designs. I do that for 2 reasons. One, just logistically executing a set, it's much easier on me if I'm kind of balancing the amount of time that I'm spending on the different cookies. So if I'm doing some much more complicated cookies like I did in this set, it's nice to have some cookies that are going to take less time to kind of balance it all out. And also, I think visually it's important to have more complex and more simple designs together to kind of balance out the eye. Just something to think about as you're putting your sets together. So I've allowed that white surface to crust, and now here I'm doing that kind of more usual piping technique that I tell y'all about, which is to lift the bag off the cookie. And you can actually see it really well, I think, at this angle here. Kind of the longer the line, the more I tend to pull the bag off the surface of the cookie, but it's usually anywhere from like 1/4 of a half an inch off the surface of the cookie, and that's how you get the best, the cleanest lines, the straightest lines, the smoothest lines. So that is the little rainbow stripe. And next up is the rainbow. And here I'm doing one of my favorite kind of piping techniques, which is to just do this zigzag. I don't really know if there's a proper name for it, but I call it the zigzag. And what I'm doing is I'm just applying an even amount of pressure and zigzagging it back and forth, making sure to connect the zigzags. So they're not like separated zigzags, because I want it to be just one kind of continuous lump of color, but with some texture. And with this kind of technique, I think it's important to use a medium peak to maintain that definition. You can kind of see here that my orange is probably closer to a soft peak, which isn't going to maintain as much integrity of the design and the texture that I would want. Not the end of the world, but just something to think about. That's why there are different uses for me for soft and medium peak all the time. Sometimes it's interchangeable what you're doing if you can use a soft or medium peak. Here, I would say this is more like somewhere between a medium to a stiff peak. And this kind of design, these clouds where you're just going for texture, you definitely want something on the stiffer side. And I would say you almost can't go too stiff with something like that. So if anything, err on the stiffer side. And here, goodness gracious me, I did 3 letters in this technique, nearly died. That's an exaggeration. I think it took me about 10 minutes a cookie to do this. It's a combination of this particular technique. These are these pressure piped teardrops, which take a while, but then I was alternating colors. Do yourselves a favor, friends. Don't do this. I think if you want to maybe do this technique and use the rainbow colors, but give yourself a little bit of a break, I think if I did this again, I would probably do one color of each row. So like a row of red, a row of orange, a row of yellow. And that just means it's just going to go faster because I can just use one bag for an entire row, then switch out. Because every time you have to switch out a bag, it's just more time. It just adds more time. And with all these videos, I always edit out the transition moments of switching my bag. So you don't see that. It doesn't just instantly pop into the frame like it appears to here. Again, so this technique is this pressure pipe teardrop that I use a lot. And basically you're just piping a circle with a lot of pressure and then pulling away and releasing pressure at the same time. It's a great technique to master. I just showed you there where I used my little boo-boo stick because I made a mistake. I think half of getting better at anything is just learning how to recover when you make mistakes. Certainly how my journey has gone with cookies for sure. And here I'm just speeding this up because y'all don't need to sit here for 10 minutes and watch me pipe these teardrops. I certainly don't need to. So what else can I say about this? While this did take me forever, I do love the effect of alternating every drop with a different color. I just think it looks super cool. I almost wish I had sped this up even more. But I think this is pretty cool. I'm actually getting mesmerized watching myself. Is that weird? No shame. No shame. I love these letter colors, by the way, or letter cutters, I should say. These are Classics by Sweet Sugar Belle. I'm not sure if she makes them anymore, but I'll see if I can link them in the description of the video. They're just like these funky enough letter colors, have just enough character to kind of make them different. So there we go. There's the B. And that was the entire set. Wow, that went by faster than I was expecting. Well, I hope you enjoyed watching that. Hope you had some fun. Hope you have some fun trying some of these designs out yourself. And yeah, thanks so much for watching.